or 6 years, I worked from 10 at night to 6 in the morning. That was always fun because I would kiss Shirley hi and goodbye as she left for work and I'd come home to go to sleep. I did that for a few years, and I worked for Service Master for a little while. And I worked, then I started working at Lewis. I've been with Lewis Drug now about 10 years. I started out in the garden shop. The first summer I worked there in the garden shop, that was a fun thing. I love plants. I have a garden in my condo right now. Shirley hollers at me. I have about 15 or 20 plants in my condo, green plants in my condo that I try very hard to keep alive. I tell people that I have two that we've had for over 30 years. One's a philodendron. Of course, you can't kill a philodendron. We keep trying, but it hasn't happened. And I have what I call the Chinese rope plant that a friend of mine gave me when I was in Rockford, Illinois. And we've had those for over 30 years. And they just add to the collection. But I started working in the garden shop there, and then as garden season started ending, the store manager said, "Hey, I've got an opening for a floor manager. You want to come inside?" And so I went inside, started working as a floor manager. Had surgery about 6 years ago on my foot, so I couldn't be a floor manager anymore. Then I moved into being in the money room and customer service at Lewis. I work around the city. I'm based at Lewis on Louise, down at 69th and Louise, but I also work at Southwest, Southgate, Westgate, Eastgate, and Ellis, the new T. Ellis store. I have keys for all six stores in my condo, and I have codes in all 6 stores. So keeps me busy. I have to get up in the morning, I have to look at the calendar and decide where I'm going to be so I know what set of keys to take with me. But I've done that worked for Lewis for about 10 years. My 10th anniversary comes up this month, which is kind of interesting. I'm married. I have 3 boys. All 3 boys live right around this area. One lives here in two of them here in Sioux Falls. One lives in T. My grandkids are all right here. We have 8 grandkids. Started out with 5 girls and ended up with 5 girls and 3 boys. The last 3 kids are all boys. The last 3 grandkids are all boys. Matter of fact, we get 2 of them this afternoon for lunch and for a little while this afternoon, so that'll be interesting. They wear us out. They're 5 and 3. The 3-year-old comes in and he just starts as a holy terror and doesn't end until he leaves. Grandma and Grandpa love it when they go home. You know, we love it while they're there, but we really love it when they go home because then it's nap time. You know. So. When Judy first asked me to do this, I said, okay, without thinking. And I said, okay, now what am I supposed to do? Well, just whatever you want to do for Lent. Oh, okay. Sounds like a winner. I love the question that Kathy posed to the kids and that Nathan started out with this morning. What kind of animal would you be if you had to choose? I kind of like that. This is just going from what I heard this morning in worship, so I'm just kind of going from there to begin with. But yeah, what kind of animal would you be? I know Nathan couldn't ask, he can ask the question, but he couldn't wait for answers. I'm going to wait for some answers.
It's really funny because we're sitting in the sanctuary and my husband didn't even ask me. He just turned and said, "Well, you'd be an elephant." And he's right.
Because you don't forget?
But not for the reasons you think.
Okay.
Their memory and their sense of community. And when they would travel for days to honor a death, they're incredible. Sensitive skin that looks really hard and awful. I can't think of a thing that I don't like about an elephant. And cool. The babies are so doggone and cute. I thought it was interesting that he knows me that well. No question about it.
There we go. Cool. I would think that too about an elephant. That was my first thought, was one that, an elephant never forgets. My wife is like that too. She never forgets anything. And I keep getting reminded of it every time I turn around. But but she never forgets. But very caring, very sensitive, very family oriented. Cool. What else?
When he mentioned a robin, I thought, I don't want to be a robin because they have to eat worms. But I would love to sing like a robin.
Mm-hmm. Yep, no doubt. I like the analysis that he gave. He says something about, he took a survey and he was like a lamb. I kind of like that idea. We're all, we think of ourselves as lambs with Christ as our shepherd and as our shepherd, and we follow him. I like the analysis of the mother hen and the baby chicks. That one I hadn't really thought. I thought about it, but I never really thought about it too much. But that's kind of an interesting analogy of being a mother hen with baby chicks and whatnot. So, anyway, okay. What are some of the traditions you guys have for Easter? I'm going to go past Lent. We're going to go to Easter for a second. But what kind of traditions do you have for Easter? Mm-hmm.
I had an untradition. I grew up in a fundamentalist denomination that didn't believe in celebrating Easter as a particular event, although we did have Easter egg hunts and lots of candy and all of that. So I had to kind of come up with my own ideas in my head about how I wanted to celebrate Easter, and I did, and I had a real sense of that from being very young. I did not like the idea of not celebrating Easter. So anyway.
Yep, behind you, Judy.
Easter sunrise services. As a youth, we got up very, very early and went to services so that we could watch the sunrise, and that was just part of growing up, I guess. I loved it.
My first parish in Illinois, in Hanover, Illinois, we had just a very active youth group. And we did sunrise service. Not the first year I was there, but the second year I was there, we did a sunrise service. And the kids wrote the service. And as we went out, we went out. There was a little. It's called the Apple River. I'm pretty sure it's called the Apple River Cemetery. It's on the side of a hill overlooking a beautiful valley. And we set up out there. We set up on some hay bales and some wood planks and whatnot. And we set up the church service and all that kind of stuff. And we started before sunrise. And as we finished the service, the sun was just popping up over the top of the hill. Just beautiful. Shine down on us. You could see the sun. You could see as the sun was coming up, the shadow. The sun just started creeping up, and the shadow was leaving. And just as we got to the part about Mary coming from the tomb to tell the disciples that that Jesus had risen, the sun popped up. It was beautiful. It was a glorious service. That's the first one that I had ever led with the youth, and it was just beautiful. It was great. I had a great time with that. When we talked to the kids from that church, and I talked to several of them, I married several of them, but we talked to them every once in a while, and those are some of the memories they keep bringing up. Talk about the sunrise service and some of the youth services we did, and some of the dinners and stuff that we did. They talk about all those things. Just as a side, we used to do chili soup suppers, but we'd fix chili and chicken noodle soup with homemade noodles. Have you ever taken a bunch of young kids, young girls especially, and taught them how to make noodles? I don't tell them I don't tell them what's going to happen when they make the noodles to begin with. But they all of a sudden they're working with the flour and the egg, and they've got their hands are covered with paste. Whoa, this is lucky! But I said they taste really good when we're done with them, and they agreed. And but they had a lot of fun with those, trying to make those noodles. What are some other things? Some of the things I remember when I was growing up. When we would certainly go to church. Our church didn't have a sunrise service, so I never got to do a sunrise service with the church. But we would go to church services and go in our Sunday best. Always for Easter Sunday, we always had a new shirt, a new tie. I don't know why. That's just what my mom decided we needed. So my brother and I had a new shirt and new tie. My 3 sisters all had new dresses. That was always kind of fun to be able to go. A big group of people, and they just had a ball at church. But we'd come home and try to find Easter baskets that my mother and father had put together and then hid. That was always fun because trying to find places to hide 5 Easter baskets in a 3-bedroom house was really interesting. Trying to figure out where the Easter baskets were and try to find them. We've done that with our 3 boys when they were growing up. We would always make them that kind of thing and hide the baskets and had them try to find them. We've tried to instill that in our grandchildren. We've had a couple of Easter dinners, big Easter dinners, when we get together with the kids and the in-laws and outlaws and the kids and all that kind of stuff, and we've tried to hide baskets. It's kind of fun. They just look at us like, wait a minute, what? We have to find a basket? What basket?
Haven't thought about this for a long time, but I don't know what started this tradition, but at Easter time when I was a little girl, my gift had nothing to do with baskets and eggs, but they were real live chicks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they were colored.
Oh, sure.
And I never knew what happened to those babies. They didn't last very long. All of a sudden, they just disappeared. And I'm old enough to remember that we always had a corsage.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Okay.
Through high school, I had a boyfriend who brought me an orchid every Easter.
Oh, cool.
And I wasn't alone. We were dressed, and as little girls, we had new hats and gloves and everything. And it was a high holy day. Mm-hmm. And that's how it was viewed. It wasn't just a celebration because it was a high holy day.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I know. I remember some of those times in celebration.
Well, when I was growing up, and even since I've been grown up, one of the things I've always looked forward to is singing Jesus Christ is Risen Today at the beginning of the service, and when the sanctuary choir sang the Hallelujah chorus. That was always very inspirational.
Sure. Cool. I remember singing the first time I did that, did the Hallelujah chorus for Easter. That was interesting.
This is something that wasn't a part of my growing up, but as a pastor, one church that I served on Easter morning, the only worship service was at 6:30, and then the men served pancakes afterwards.
Oh, sure. Yep.
And I could not believe that at 6:30 in the morning we would have standing room only most Easter Sundays. And, I mean, that's... And yet, and it still sticks out in my mind that, that people would turn out and show up for that. But and the pancakes were always good. But I had 2 churches that I was serving, and this normally was late service, but they had the early service, and the other one was able to keep their regular time because we were done with everything in time. So. Yep. But that was something where it was just the whole community was involved in that at that point. So,
yeah, I remember a couple of those kind of services. I'm trying to think. We did several like that in my first parish. Like I said, my first parish in Illinois. We didn't really do a lot of that in the Miller congregation. We did some sunrise services, and that was always it was interesting. We tried to do them as a community thing, and sometimes it worked out really well. And then we would do the youth groups from the Methodist, the Lutheran, and the Presbyterian Church would get together and serve a sunrise breakfast. And we had pretty good attendance. It was interesting. It was always an event. They'd come and people would show up, and then you'd say we had quite a few people. It was more interesting. Sometimes we had more people at breakfast than we had at the service. Sometimes service was rather cold outside. Otherwise, it was nice. It was, we had a good time with it. It was interesting. Cool. Let's see. What are some any other kind of Easter traditions, memories, that kind of stuff? I mean, that was what we kind of talked about doing was Easter memories. I can remember some with our grandkids. I can remember Shirley trying to do Easter egg hunts. That was always fun. We organized a few of them in congregations, and where we'd have a community Easter egg hunt, and we'd try to do some things like that. Putting together the Easter eggs is always a fun thing. Sure, down at Canton at the nursing home where Shirley works, they put together Easter eggs it's the community Easter egg hunt. The Methodist Church hosts it, and they put together something like 2,500 eggs that they bring up to the nursing home, and the residents stuff with things in them. And then the Methodists also put together a few special ones that they throw in with the group. It's always kind of fun, especially when it's really nice outside. Then they can go outside and put the eggs out in the yard and have the kids take off and go get the eggs that way. Otherwise, when they do that in the nursing, if it's inclement weather and have to do it in the nursing home, they do it in the dining room. They clear out the dining room and just throw the eggs on the floor. You just toss the eggs out on the floor, and the kids go running for them. Okay, that's all right. But that makes it kind of interesting. So we have to, when we do the eggs, Shirley usually brings home 300-400 eggs for us to do. I don't know why, but we end up having to do them. But they don't always snap together real well with candy or something in them, so you have to tape them so they stay together. So it's always kind of fun. We have to take the tape off and then put the stuff in the eggs and then tape the eggs back up again.
We always hid eggs, but they were always outside unless it was really awful. But I remember, and we carried that on when our kids were little. And so we had all these eggs, several dozen, hidden in our backyard and up in the garden and in the trees and whatnot. And we didn't think about it, but we let our great big giant lab, Newfoundland mixed dog out. And when the kids went out to find the eggs, there was not a one. She had eaten them all. So
Oh, no.
the next couple days, she had to spend most of her time outside because it wasn't pretty.
Yeah, I can imagine it wasn't, yeah.
So we kind of had to be careful after that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, disappointed children, let me tell you.
I can imagine, yes. That happened, didn't happen at Easter, it happened at Christmas with my sister. My sister would put together bags for my 3 boys and have them at her house, and their dog, Race, got upstairs and got into the bags. And Teresa has candy and all kinds of stuff in the bags. So Race got into the bags and was eating all kinds of stuff, and Teresa was very upset. But I can imagine, that would happen with Easter eggs too. It could happen very well with Easter eggs. How about dyeing Easter eggs? Have some stuff about dyeing Easter eggs. I know they do that down at the nursing home, and when they do it down in the nursing home, I have to watch because sometimes the residents like to drink the dye water. I mean, not that it's going to hurt them because they use stuff that's pretty innocuous. It's just water and food coloring, so it's not too bad. But we have to watch that with our young children too.
Well, when I was little, that was one of the big things was the fun thing to do. We of course lived on the farm, so we had plenty of chickens and plenty of eggs, so we'd dye eggs all kinds of colors and try to put pictures on them and all kinds of stuff. And then it was always a big time when the families, our relatives, got together, and my mother would always make some big meal, either a duck or a chickens or whatever we had.
Yeah. Yep, I can remember that. I can remember going out to my, not necessarily on my dad's side of the family, but on my mom's side of the family, we would go, we always had some great big meals. Like Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, anytime it was appropriate to get together, just a Sunday. But we would do that too. We'd go out. I can remember going out to my grandparents' farm. We lived in Council Bluffs, Iowa. My grandparents lived in Shelby, Iowa, which is just a little ways away out of town, but they lived on a farm. And my grandfather worked for the guy across the road and that kind of stuff. But they had some chickens and some ducks and cows and pigs and that kind of stuff. I can remember as a child helping out, and we'd go out there on Easter to have lunch or something like that, and have supper or lunch, and we'd go out the day before and spend the night, and then Sunday morning we'd go to church, and we'd come home from church and change, and then we'd have to catch the chickens for lunch. You know, us kids would chase the chickens around and finally catch 3 or 4. Grandpa would point out which ones he wanted. He always had a few dying and diseased chickens he wanted to get rid of. I say that because one of my friends in Miller would say that about, he always had some dead and dying or diseased pigs he wanted to get rid of, so we'd butcher one of those for a meal. Yes?
We haven't mentioned flowers. You've got to have flowers for
yep.
Easter. And I love Easter lilies, but we always used to deliver them, to the people who couldn't get here.
Sure.
And then they switched to mums, and I was so disappointed, but now I get it. Easter lilies really have a bad smell.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know how you get around that, but I do love the looks of an Easter lily.
I have a story for Easter lilies. When we were in Rockford, was on internship in Rockford, Illinois, and at Third Presbyterian Church. And at Easter time, they had lilies in the sanctuary, and all kinds of lilies and whatnot. The year I was there was very warm in the spring, and the lilies all bloomed before Easter. And the florists and the greenhouses realized that, so they started some other ones to force them to bloom right around Easter time. On Saturday before Easter, they delivered our plants, and I just happened to be in the church for some odd reason, and I looked and I thought, oh no. We had probably 40 lily plants, but they were the blooms were just as tight as your fist. Not a flower among them. And I thought, oh, this can't be good. So I said, I called the greenhouse and says, okay, so these are nice they're nice plants, but that's all they are, plants. I says, we don't have any flowers. And the guy says, well, have you got a warm place? A warm place. Yeah, I says, I think I can put them in the secretary's office and turn the heat up. He says, try that. He says, if that doesn't work, next week they'll be beautiful. So we got up on Sunday morning. I got there, and there was a couple of them that just barely popped. None of them are bloomed, so we put all the green plants up front. And I got up front of the church, and I says, the guy from the greenhouse assures me these will be beautiful next week. Just leave them here, and we'll share them next Sunday when they'll be in full bloom. Oh, it was just funny as all get up. And we took some home when we were in Miller. We had a couple of plants left over. We usually had them and then take them to shut-ins and whatnot, but we had a couple of plants that were left over, so I took them outside and planted them outside the house, and didn't think anything about it. They were green for a while, and then they kind of died off, and then all of a sudden, in October, the 1st of October, I had these 2 lily plants that were blooming in my yard. Now, why in the world they were blooming in October, I have no clue. They don't usually bloom a second time, but all of a sudden they were blooming in October at my house. I have some pictures in my collection of stuff from the church. But yeah, they were blooming in October, which is unreal. But yeah, right now, like I say, we do mums now, but we would do when they had the lilies in the church. They would deliver them on Saturday, and you could walk in the first thing Sunday morning. You didn't even have to know that they were delivered to know they were in the church, because you could just smell them the minute you walked in, and it would drive several of the ladies in the congregation nuts, with that smell. My wife is one of them. She's very sensitive to the smells of flowers. That's why I can't buy roses. I love to grow them, and I grew a lot of them. But I just couldn't bring them in the house. So I had all 3 churches we lived, all 3 churches I served, we had a manse, and I put rose gardens in all 3 of them, just because I love roses. And so I would have them at the church in Miller. They were out front along the sidewalk leading up to the house, and people would walk by and see my roses, and those are so beautiful. And I said, you want one? Sure. I keep a pair of scissors right inside the door on the porch. Just go in and clip, or a pair of shears. He says, just go in and grab them and clip whatever you want off the bushes. Really? I says, yep. I don't even have to be here to tell you to do it. If you want them, just do it. He says, I explained to him, I can't take them in the house. They're just going to stay out here and look pretty on the vine, and then when they die, they die. I clip them off, and they come back again, so we'll see what happens. But I can't take them in the house because Shirley's very sensitive to them. People look around when I tell them that, and I tell them, they're very sensitive. Shirley's very sensitive, and I says, I can't buy roses. Oh, you are so lucky.
I was just going to say, Lent is such a kind of a sad, dormant kind of time, but one thing I do remember, and I still think about this, is Holy Week. And that Holy Week was really a whole week. I mean, we did different things almost every day or every night to commemorate that this was the end of Christ's life and what happened, and kind of reliving that through the scriptures and through services and through songs. And then Easter was always just like a breath of fresh air and flowers and new life and spring, and you just hoped and prayed it wouldn't snow on Easter morning. Because that happened too.
Oh yeah, that's happened before.
I remember, I'm old enough to remember that after Easter you could get out your white shoes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we wore them for Easter, yes, but
Yeah.
that was always, but I was pretty young then, but I always looked forward to it.
There's just some of those fashion things like that you don't think about very often. It's like wearing white after Labor Day. What was I just had a stray thought, and it just lost me. Oh, Judy was talking about Holy Week. In one of the churches I served, as a community, we celebrated Holy Week that way. We started on Monday and went all through the service. We did did a lot of other things during the week, and then on Monday, Thursday, we did a celebration of communion, but we did it with the Passover meal type thing. Sat down and had a meal and did the whole Passover thing I had to brush up on my Hebrew skills to try to say some of those words, and I don't remember them at all. I don't know about you, Skip, but I had a heck of a time with them. Let's see, I have to go back and try to figure out how to say this. But learned that, and then did the like I say, the Monday, Thursday service, the Good Friday service. It was always interesting. We actually had a watch night service on Saturday night, where we'd get together and pray, and much like the disciples and whatnot. Wow. Go ahead.
Back to the Easter eggs. This is confession time.
Uh-oh.
When I had moved to Fairmont, Minnesota for a period of time, Jim's house was situated, his backyard was like a small park. And for Easter, we had his family there. And I'm not sure how many grandkids, but we were going to have the Easter egg hunt with the plastic eggs. And so I was designated to hide the eggs. And I did that, and so many places to hide them. And I got done, and he said, well, how many did you hide? And I don't know, but I looked at the package, and I think there were 20. And then, well, do you know where they're at? And I said, well, kinda, I don't remember every single egg. So from that time on, the joke is that I can hide my own Easter eggs. So when Easter comes around, I know I'm going to hear that. and sometimes it's not even Easter time.
Oh, yeah.
Something will happen. He said, well, you can hide your own Easter eggs.
Oh, yeah. We have some traditions like that with my 3 boys and my wife, yes. They always give her a hard time about something or another.
I remember vividly, all my growing up, Holy Week was a big deal. I didn't understand what the connection with Jesus and chicks and all that, it didn't make any sense to me. But I remember we had a we were in a little small town with a ministerial association, and the preaching would start at noon on Good Friday. And they would each minister come and preach, and preach, and preach, and sometimes until 6 o'clock. It was the whole day, and you could come and go, but every minister had to have his shot.
Oh, yeah.
And that was forever and ever. And choirs would come, and it was, it felt like Christmas. It was very important, and it was a very somber time, and taken very seriously.
Yeah. No, I remember that we did that in, I can't remember which community it was. Several years we would do the 7 last words of Christ. You know, and each pastor in town would be assigned, certain words and whatnot, and you could do whatever you wanted to do with that time slot you had. And it would be the pastor would come. They could do the pastor could preach. He could bring his choir, or soloist or whatever the case was. You had.
It would have been nice some years if they would have coordinated a little bit, because sometimes the topic and exactly the same. It was like just heard that.
Yeah.
And, it's like, come on, you guys, get together.
That's one of the nice parts about doing the 7 last words of Christ. Then everybody has something different to preach on. But I could see where that would happen. You'd get 6 or 7 messages on Easter.
I remember ladies in hats and gloves, and whatever happened to that? Actually, they wore skirts too. It was not jeans; it was skirts. It's beautiful.
Yeah. You come out in your Easter finery.
Sunday best.
Oh yeah, Sunday best. Yeah, I can remember. I remember that when I was growing up. Like I say, us 5 kids. There's 5 kids in my family. The 2 boys and 3 girls, and I remember having a new shirt and tie, and the girls had new dresses.
Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
So Linda brought up the idea of the baby chicks. I remember getting chicks only 1 year, but I got 3, and I named them all. I remember Whitey and Elvis, but I can't remember the third one's name. But anyway, I was such an animal lover. My folks knew that these chicks would have to have, a full life. So, and my dad built a pen for the backyard. We had the chicks in the backyard until they started getting feathers. And then some friends of ours lived on a farm and had a chicken coop. So then I was able to part with my chicks, knowing they were going to a good home, not thinking too far ahead, of course. And so they went out to the Hugelman farm, and a few weeks later, we got the sad news their chicken coop had burned.
Oh, no.
And I remember sobbing for my chicks, and my neighbor boy came over. I mean, isn't it funny what you remember vividly from childhood? I remember being on the porch and telling Gary Clappel that my chicks had died, and he laughed. And I just was so mad at him. I could never forgive him for that. But that's my chick story.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, wow. I remember when, of course, growing up in the three small towns. These were all rural communities, and sometimes like the hardware store would get chicks in. They get just a shipment of chicks, or even the granary would get a shipment of chicks. And I'd take the boys down to see them, because that was quite the thing. They never saw that before. All of a sudden, they're looking, and there's this great big box, and it's just nothing but chickens, little chicks, the baby chicks, and the kids were just, oh, cool. Can we take some home? I says, no. He says, I'd be living outside with them while they were growing up. That's where Mom would have me. I know this doesn't deal with Easter, but when we lived in Illinois, in Hanover, it was the mallard duck capital of the world. Whistling Wings, I don't know whether you've ever heard of it, but Whistling Wings raised mallard ducks, and they raised several kinds of ducks. But you could get ducks from them everywhere from egg to a finished product, finished smoked duck, and everything in between. We went out and visited their farm and got a tour of their place, and they had had an office downtown. A hatchery was downtown, and you could go by the hatchery there, and they always had chicks in a glassed-in thing. And if you wanted to, the owner would take the chicks out and let you play with them, play with the ducklings, and you could play with the ducklings. So my kids were little at that time, and so we would go down there. We'd walk downtown or something, and we'd just have to stop at the hatchery so they could play with the duckies for a little bit, And then we were coming by there one day and could hear this cheep, 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 and I kind of figured, what in the world's going on? There was one out. When the eggs didn't hatch at the hatchery, they kind of had a little garbage dump underneath there, and evidently one of the eggs hatched. And the duckling was out running around, and he come, because they're raised around humans, so they're not scared of it, they're not scared of you or anything. So this little duckling come running up to us, cheep, 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 and the boys were just ecstatic. Well, this is really cool, a ducky, they were holding on to it and stuff. I said, we got to take it back in. So we took it in, and he says, no, we don't really want it. You want to take it home? I says, no, I'd be living outside with it. That's where my wife would have me. I'd be outside with the ducky while the boys are inside. But that was interesting. That, like I say, the kids just love that. I don't even know if it's still there. Any other memories about Easter, Lent, that kind of stuff?
I could share what we did. The last congregation I served was at New Hope Baptist Church, which is up on the north side of town. It's no longer there. It's still a building, but we had a black locust tree in our front yard. We still do. It has the huge vicious thorns on it, Somehow, without damaging myself, I wove those into a crown. And then we put that on a little table, and we had 7 candles, and all white candles, and we would light one of them. I don't know how many weeks there are in Lent, but we started way back. We started 6 weeks back with that, and we did one of the 7 last words every week. The same way you do the readings at Christmas. We did it that way, and the first candle never burned that much, so it was taller than the others, and they spiraled down to the middle where the Easter candle was. And I've never seen anybody else do that, and I thought it up myself, so it was a really wonderful thing. I have great memories of it. So yeah.
Interesting. I had never thought about doing something like that before. That would be kind of cool. I mean, I've done the 7 last words of Christ several times, but never that way. I'm not sure I'd be able to weave a crown, but I bet. Cool. Anything else? I know Lent is it does seem like a dark time. The music the choir sings and the music that's in the hymn book that's kind of goes for Lent is dark and foreboding type of things. That we look at it that way, that this is a somber time, a time of reminiscence, a time of remembering, a time of looking at yourself and trying to decide what it is that you need to get rid of. One of those things that we talk about during Lent is giving up something for Lent. Have you given up something for Lent? Have you ever thought about doing that? I know I've talked to people before. They talk about, well, I'm going to give up cigarettes for Lent, or I'm going to give up this for Lent, and I'm thinking that's not something that is really I don't know whether that's something that's a real hardship. Well, for some people, giving up cigarettes would be a hardship. But giving up something like that. So it kind of talked about, you thought about something like that during the time of Lent, giving up something to. Probably not. It's not a Presbyterian tradition to give up something for Lent.
Is it more of a Catholic tradition to give up something, but is it a Protestant tradition to instead take on some good works or something that you want to do?
Yeah.
Some discipline like writing a prayer every day, or sharing with others or something like that. And this Monday study group that I'm in here at the church just had finished a book about connections. So this year I was going to give up drinking. Not a real vice of mine, but enough. I was out at the basketball game, and a good friend of ours from Beersford has a wife who's a UCC pastor. And I jokingly said to him, well, that's what I'm giving up. And he said, why would you do that? He said, we don't do that. And kind of reinforced that concept that we don't do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought, okay, 40 days of Lent, I'm going to try to make a special connection 40 times. Maybe it's things I already would have done, but I'm going to be more intentional and write them down and think about them. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Cool.
I'm challenging anybody else now. What are you doing?
That's interesting. Giving up something for Lent is not like I say, it's not a Presbyterian tradition, not a Reformed tradition. It's more a Catholic thing, doing the penance and that kind of stuff for giving it up. But yeah, taking on something, I hadn't really thought about that, but that would be interesting, taking on a project of some kind for the 40 days of Lent.
I try to eat more fish because it's available.
I don't. That's not something I would take on because I'm not a fish lover. When you go to some of those Lenten buffets, and they all have fish on them. I thought, no, we don't do that.
Well, for several years I gave up sugar for Lent. And I think I had an alternative motive. I was trying to lose a little weight. And so finally my daughter said, Mom, that's so stupid. She said, if you really want to do something meaningful, you should think about what you can do for other people during Lent rather than, depriving yourself of something.
Yeah.
So I quit doing that. But I've really enjoyed this study book that we have. It's really been enlightening. I enjoy reading it every day, and I think that kind of makes us stay connected with what's going on in the church and with Lent. So.
The full to the brim.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Claire said my copy's in the office and I haven't got it yet. So I signed this up and I thought Shirley was going to get it. She thought I was going to get it, and it's still sitting there.
Well, it's good anytime.
I'll get it on Tuesday when I'm here for bells. Cool. All right. Anything else?
We've gotten so that we take what we do for Lent at that point on giving something up, and I'm trying to make it a tradition to give up my New Year's resolutions for Lent.
Enjoy those 40 days somewhere. All right. Well, I think we're probably just about out of time here. Cool. I want to thank you for sharing, because it's interesting to me, because I don't get a chance to do that much teaching and preaching. I mean, I was in Laverne last week. They'd called there, but they're between pastors, so I went down there, and a couple of Sundays in Easter, a couple of Sundays in April, and in May I'm going down to Sioux City, Iowa. I don't know how in the world the churches in Sioux City have gotten my name, but Westminster just called me the other day and wants me to come down and spend 2 or 3 Sundays at their church. They're without a pastor right now. I was at First Presbyterian Church in Sioux City because they were without a pastor for a while. So it's just interesting. And then I had a call from another church, Spirit Lake, Iowa, called me, wanted me to come over there. I thought, good grief, you guys, this is ridiculous. I don't mind traveling a little bit, but that one was too far for me to go. Well, it's not Spirit Lake, Storm Lake, Iowa. There we go, Storm Lake, Iowa, Buena Vista College. First Presbyterian Church called me down there, and I says, no, you're just a little bit outside my comfort range. It's a beautiful church. I've been there. My son went to college at Buena Vista, so we've been down there several times, but I said, you're just a shade out of my comfort area. So, all right.
Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
Mike.
Let's close with prayer, and then we'll go from there. Let's close with prayer. God, during this time of Lent, we talk about a lot of things and do a lot of things, but help us to be aware of your presence in our lives and in the presence we can have in other people's lives. Sometimes we think about the things that we do that doesn't make any sense for us to be able to do them and not be able to share. Help us to be able to look at one another and to see you in them, and to be the kind of people that you would have us to be in this world. We thank you for being with us, for caring for us and loving us like your children, watching out over us like a mother hen, leading us like a shepherd. Just be with us, God, in this time as we try to share with one another who we are and what we're about. And that, God, we can be the kind of people that you would have us to be, today and every day. We ask this in your Son's wonderful name. Amen.
Okay. And I would just remind you to come back next week. Chris Hill, I was visiting with him after the service today. He is going to be talking to us about the place that music plays in his life and his faith story. And I encouraged him to bring his clarinet. Whether he will or not, I don't know, but I know we're going to be hearing some of his favorite music. And also keep him in your prayers, because he said this is probably the most stressful week coming up that he's had ever, because he's got all these concerts and a lot of new music, and he just is getting the music now, and he said it's very difficult music. And so just keep Chris in your prayers this week. I think he'll covet carrying.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You guys have a great day and week.